Welcome, Immortalites, to another round of the conversations. Today, I have a pretty familiar name. It is Cole McCormick, filmmaker, podcaster, voice actor, V4V Sat Slinger, and host of the America Plus podcast. Are there any other titles you want to add to that list, Cole?
Legend one day, but not yet.
Aspiring in the making. Actually, that's a good start.
Yes,
so
sir.
I was trying to think where to start off with you, and because we're kind of like, we kind of know each other, but we've never actually really sat down and spoke. So I was wondering if you could give us like your quick superhero origin story. So, you're born too late, apparently. I heard that on your latest episode. So you got a lot of energy making up for lost time, perhaps. Do you want to just give us a quick backstory to yourself?
Yeah, man. My origin story is I was born in Henderson, Nevada, right outside of Las Vegas, in 1997, March 25th. And I was the firstborn of my parents. And so I was their first kid. They were 2 years married. And my dad was like maybe like 21 or 22 when he had me.
Okay, pretty
And
young.
so I was like, yeah, super young, super young. And I've just been like the product of their experimentation, really, and their decision making at like full frontal. They chose to move away from Vegas when I was like one. And then that's when I went to Arizona and just lived out there. That's where I grew up my entire life. It's where all my memories are. And then just growing up, not a lot of money. The situation was like ups and downs, like some years we had some years we didn't have any. Some years my dad might have skipped a mortgage payment so we could go to Disney. So it was like one of those things going on. But it was good. Like it was like focused on work. My parents were like always working, and that's what I saw from them. And there was always like, when I was young, I remember being like upset that my parents would work a lot, but then there'd be moments in like the crisis where it might have like been really helpful. And like one time I was like 6 years old and there was like a giant hurricane, not hurricane. There's a giant, it's called, it's like a dust storm in Arizona. It's called a haboob. Have you ever heard of that?
Never heard of that.
Yeah. There's a legitimate storm in Arizona called Haboob. And these things are like always like, they can get pretty crazy.
Sounds like Arabic. Haboob. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, exactly. It gets biblical, dude. It looks biblical. It really does.
It's like that full storm front coming in. Like you can watch it from the distance. Yeah, that's cool.
1,000%. If you look it up, it's exactly like that. The local news is always talking about it. But I see my dad working all the time, and during this giant haboob, the power went out for the entire town. And the only place that had power in our area was this one Circle K. And that's where like my dad would like, he had like relationships with like a bunch of different businesses. Like there's just like people, he's like this like people guy. And I realized that like, he actually had a connection with this Circle K's refrigerator, and he was able to put our food in this Circle K's refrigerator, even though he didn't like, even though no one else had this. Long story short, when I was young, I saw benefits of my parents working and making relationships with people and being able to protect the family and make sure that we had either refrigerated food or some sort of living space in a moment that might have looked like we wouldn't have that. And my entire family was always like busy when I was growing up. So they were always working. And when I was in school, elementary, we were either like in school or at church, not because of like any like forced thing. It was just because like that's just where the time was spent. My mother, on my mother's side, her father was a pastor, and she lived in the Midwest. So that's where the religious side comes from. So she just grew up in church, and that's just where we spent a lot of our times on the weekends and stuff like that. And that's where we volunteered.
Yeah, similar to, I suppose, my family in some respects. My mum and dad were working a lot, and I've got a lot of memories of coming out to like different properties and just helping dad out. Not that I could help out at all. It was more like he was babysitting me whilst also doing some, gardening, looking after tenants and that sort of stuff. And it's I have this one memory. It's kind of unfortunate because it's like one of those core memories, you know, from the I can't remember what that movie was called, Emotions, the Pixar one,
Inside Out.
and Inside Out. That's it. Yes, and one of these core memories I have is wanting to play soccer in the backyard, and going inside to Dad and asking like, "Hey, Dad, come out and play," that sort of thing. And he was working on like a kind of like a side hustle of creating his own computer game. So he was like coding and things like this. And I remember him just being like, "Oh, sorry, like I have to keep working. Like you go out and either play with your brother or just play by yourself." I can't remember which one. And that really sticks in my mind. And it's kind of got like this negative tinge to it, but which is unfortunate because I'm sure 99% of the time he would have came out and played and then done that stuff, you know, later in the evening after work. But it's now that where you kind of like get a bit older and you'd be like 25, 26, where you start to appreciate like, oh yeah, they put in a lot of work for my sake.
Yeah, man, that's so real. Like, and my dad even told me, like, when I was like later in high school, like right before I graduated high school, him telling me like he wished he didn't work as much, but that work also put the family in a position to be okay in certain times when a lot of other families weren't okay. So it's like it's this giant lesson in my family of like delayed gratitude, and that's been like a lesson in my own life.
Yeah, a delayed gratification as well. That's you know, it's pretty important to be able to look out and plan for the future. And I definitely want to talk about some of the stuff you've been working on, especially Magic Mushroom Fun Time. But we might leave that
Please.
As a teaser towards the end. So when you were growing up, would you say you're like into the creative pursuits? Do you have any like childhood stories of getting into like you could see like, oh yeah, he's gonna follow some sort of creative path?
Yeah, I was always obsessed with movies. When I was a toddler, my family would say I would just watch Toy Story all day long, just all day long, just on repeat, put in the VHS, rewind it whenever it ends. There's like stories of me like visiting my grandparents and just crawling past them, not saying hello or giving them a hug and going straight to the VCR and putting in Toy Story.
Hugging the TV.
Yeah, for real. And like being Woody for Halloween and stuff like that. And I was just always obsessed with movies, to be totally real with you. When I got older, I was obsessed with Chicken Run. I had this Chicken Run t-shirt. I would just watch that movie all the time. And I would be creative. Like there'd be times when like in school and elementary when you do I'm not sure if you've ever done this, but like for Thanksgiving we do like this like hand tracement, this hand tracing, and the tracing of the hand sort of looks like a turkey.
Yeah, you turn it
like
into
I never cared.
We don't know, but we have traced hands for just various stuff.
Yeah, it's weird. And like I never cared about that. Like I never cared about art. I never cared about that, but it was like fun. I always just cared about movies. I was interested in movies. And yeah, like that's pretty much it. Like I sort of liked it. I enjoyed acting. I would always there was a moment when I was in the 6th grade, my 6th grade teacher for history, for this section of the day for history, she would always do like sketches, or she would have us act out some portion of the history book. And that was always a lot of fun. So that's around that age, like 10, 11, 12 is when I realized I sort of have a passion for acting and that sort of a thing.
Yeah. And was that, I don't know, like, you know, when there's some kids who are like, I'm going to be a doctor, or I'm going to be, they're kind of lucky in the sense that they know exactly what they want, and just that's it. That's like their life path sorted out, and they don't have to go through that whole phase of being like, you know, like, what are you going to be when you grow up? And you're like, I don't know. and then you get older and older, and it's like there's still pressure on you when you're 17. And you're like, oh geez, like I don't have my shit together. Like I don't know what I want to be. Not that you necessarily even need to be anything, you know.
Yeah, that was never me. I was never lost in that. When I was like 12 years old, I forget the exact sequencing of like what movies inspired what and what really got me thinking about it. But I remember there was a moment when I was at Universal Studios out here in Hollywood. I was with my family, just a family vacation. And I had been thinking about making movies for a long time. And I was like researching some directors and just like going down like YouTube rabbit holes of like Heath Ledger and these sorts of people, just being obsessed with it. And there's a section at Universal Studios where it's right in between the escalators. I'm not sure if you know anything about that park,
No.
but there's these escalators that you take down to a certain section, and in between these escalators is a little platform where you can look out across all of Hollywood, across where like all of the studios are, and you can sort of point them out, and there's like a map. And there was a moment where my family, we just sort of dispersed. My sisters went on one ride. My parents went to get food somewhere. And I was just like solo for a minute. And I was standing out there looking out at all the studios. And there was a distinct moment that I told myself, I have to do this. I have to. And so it wasn't like I knew I should. It was like, I have to.
Yeah, that's cool. I can't say I've ever had that. I've never had that moment where it was like, yes, this is that kind of certainty, that clarity, I guess. Maybe in some other aspects of my life, something related to like handstands, where I saw a guy performing once. Not even performing, it was just like at a local calisthenics park, random Thursday during COVID, and he's like one of the best in the world. And I saw him doing one-arm handstands, and I was just like, holy shit, yeah, that thing I need to do that thing. So perhaps it's kind of similar in that respect. And so then I guess like high school and growing up, that was did you experiment with doing any short films or any creative pursuits like that?
Yeah, totally. Whenever someone had a camera, we were always doing like a little sketch. Whenever, like, we would do fake fight videos and just pretend we're fighting in the front yard. I remember I got a video camera for like I was in like the 6th or 7th grade, and I recorded a bunch of stuff. We did fake commercials. We did like a fake Sprite commercial, just a bunch of like silly stuff, like purposefully bad Gatorade commercials. Where like they always miss the basket, but they're drinking Gatorade, like G2. I'm not sure if you know G2. We had like the stupidest. It was just this stupid offshoot Gatorade version, G2. It was like a sequel, and we just made like stupid commercials with that. And yeah, we would do Star Wars reenactments. And yeah, and as I got older, like that got more and more fun. And like I was just thinking to myself, like, I wonder how bigger this can get. I wonder how much more things I could do. And I was also watching YouTube and stuff like that. So I knew that YouTube could be a thing too.
Yeah. You would have grown up right during the because I kind of look somewhat like 5 years older than you. So I definitely grew up with YouTube as I distinctly remember watching it for the first time when I was, I don't know, like 7 years old. No, it would have been much later than that, like 12, 13. Yeah, something like that. And but I never really used technology that much. I was always a little bit just off of things. Like I never really had social media. My phones have always been the kind of downgraded versions. You know, they're always like 2 or 3 years old. Never get the new ones. So, but you're the same age as my brother, and so seeing his experience, even though we're only kind of 5 years apart, he uses technology a lot differently than I do, and I suppose in his trends and the way he looks at things, there's definitely differences. And so yeah, you're probably like right in that generation where it's getting to be able to use new things and creating videos from a get-go early young age where you've got a phone and you can do these things. It probably gives a different perspective.
Yeah, man. I remember, I don't think, so I wasn't always very tech savvy. Like, I guess in the family, I was the tech kid. Like, I would fix the TV or something, but I was never interested in editing a video, and I was never interested in like what the computer was doing. So I've always been like semi interested in technology. And the first time I learned about YouTube was like when my friends told me we should like upload the video to YouTube. And I was like, I've never done that before. Like, how do we do that? Because I would just like record it and just I would record the video how I wanted to make it. And so like I wouldn't use an editing thing. I wouldn't use any of that. It was all right there. And it was really my friends who tried to like show me like how to edit the thing. I'm like, can you just edit it for me, please? Like, I don't want to deal with it.
Do you still have those old videos up on YouTube?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Publicly, here's the channel. This is my old production company. It's called CWH Productions 13. Okay.
CWH production. All right.
Yeah.
There'll be a link in the show
And you're
notes
gonna.
for those who are interested.
It's terrible. It's so terrible. You're gonna see a 7th grade Cole with long hair. I got highlights in some of them.
Nice.
It's
Yeah.
real. It's wild. It's real wild.
That's really cool though. You know, one of the first videos, Star Wars reenactment from 13 years ago. Sprite
Epic.
commercial. What else?
Yeah, I spelled commercial wrong,
night.
dude. And you got to keep it pristine, Like, don't correct it.
Yeah. What makes you beautiful? Harlem Shake, of course. You got into that,
dude. Oh my gosh, yeah. It's silly trends, dude. Like, it's a time capsule.
Yeah, definitely. I've got a couple of old ones. Geez, I don't even know where and if they still exist. It was an old YouTube channel. It's possible. I think it was under Mad Dog Sad Dog. That was my my handle, and it was like just a couple of like really grainy, shitty videos of like me and my friends jumping over hedges. I think we were like parkour, back before there was even the parkour kind of meme. But yeah, that's super cool, man. One thing I've noticed about you, so like when we first got introduced, and we'll probably talk more about that in the value for value section. When I was first listening to your podcast, I was like, damn, this dude has so much energy. Like it's vibrant from you. It's just bursting out, I was when you mentioned you're like born late, I was like, oh yeah. Like he's making up for lost time. Like he's got this bundle of energy, all those extra nutrients or something just infused into him. But one thing I was, and when I first heard you, I was like, there's no way this dude's going to keep doing his podcast. It's like he's going to burn himself out. But yet here you are, like 100 episodes in. So obviously I was super wrong on that, which I'm glad of. But have you, that's one of the things where you typically hear about, super creative people, where they might lack, I guess, the what would you call it, like consistency or dedication of pursuing something when it gets less fun or less interesting. Have you had any thoughts on that? Like, have you ever experienced any moments where you're like, not you just jettison something because it's not fun, or you don't stick with it?
Yes and no. Yeah, totally. And I realized the consistency thing when I was younger too. It really connected to my view of school, honestly. Like I really figured out that difference in high school, sort of identifying like who was successful like in the real world and like what did they do? Because like you always hear, like when you're in school, you always hear like go to college and like get a degree in this. And like if you're an actor, you're thinking go to college for acting, get a degree in acting, and that somehow creates a path, that somehow like studying the thing somehow creates the thing. But when you realize like out here, like no one cares about the credentials. And I realized that at a very young age. And I was always questioning school and the institution and that sort of a thing. And I was always focused on being independent, along with my parents owning their own company, like seeing their example of being in charge of their own world, their own life. I wanted that same thing. And so I was just inspired by all the artists. Like you hear about names like Christopher Nolan and George Lucas and these people who have full control over their movies. George Lucas, like he went to film school, but like he didn't learn he didn't learn to make Star Wars at film school, like that's not where you get the thing, the thing's in you. And school is good for giving you structure and showing you the history and giving you examples of how it can be done. And I was just bored with it. I wanted to just like play around with it and just try to do it myself.
It's funny how things that can be helpful or pathways for certain, I tend to look at things a lot through just personality. What's your personality type and how that kind of shapes your life in certain regards to, if you're super agreeable like myself, and I'm kind of like a people pleaser, I always have been, that things like school were just
You should meet
easy.
my girlfriend.
Yeah. Could be
she'll
could be a
totally admit that
competition.
herself. She'll totally. Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. So like school was actually really easy for me. Thankfully, you know, I've got like a bit of smarts to me as well. Thank my parents for that. And so school was just really easy because I was just like, oh, you know, you just do the test, and then if you get good grades on the test, like then you get a good score and everyone's happy. And so that was kind of like school for me. High school, university, it was actually relatively easy. And but then it got to a point like later in my life where I was starting to see things like just, you know, internal politics in a company, and this was just with my first mining job in the mining industry, and it wasn't too bad. It was just like, it was probably even less than most office politics that you'll find especially in the cities, and when you've got like more of a mixed balance between males and females, social dynamics get way more complex. And even that, I was just like, I'm so done with this. I'm so done trying to conform to, I suppose, the line or do everything as the way that it's meant to be, even though it makes no sense. And that's where you start to see, you know, things that don't really make sense, really paradoxical. Like, why do I have to do this thing? Why do I have to go to this meeting, even though the meeting's just wasting time and it's just it's for like show or showmanship rather than for actually anything productive. And I was thinking about like, what's it actually like in LA in terms of like the vibes of that town and people? Because this is one of the things where you hear where it's like super shallow and superficial because everyone's trying to, you know, people please to get that next role, because it's not actually that much based on merit. It's more based on who you know. I don't know if there's kind of the impressions of someone across the world. Is that the vibes that you get? How is that different?
It really just depends on what environment you're in and what environment you want to be in. Because in my experience, like if you work like a retail job, like me working at the dispensary, like you get a lot of different characters going in there, and some of them are going to be poor, some of them are going to be rich, and some of them are going to like be humble, some of them won't be. And it's not like a blanket thing, you know. People who choose to be in the bougie LA, they got the weird square shades and they got the highlights. Like you choose to be in that plastic world. Other people, you know, you can meet a million people who are just honest people, you know, and they just happen to be a painter on the movies, or they just happen to be an accountant, you know. And I met these people. These people are just like normal as normal is. And they just happen to live in the most insane place ever that allows everything. But LA is interesting. Like LA is really cool. I'm happy I moved out here. I moved out here when I was 20, and that was a very conscious decision. I almost moved to New York, but it was LA. LA was the move. And the vibes are good. Like I heard this a few years ago, you can make your own LA. And so it's not a blanket thing. And there's like a dark side to that, because that means like you can just totally ignore all the debauchery and the negativity and the corruption and the homeless and the problems, you know? So there's like a lack of ownership of LA. And that's like sort of the problem.
Gotcha. Yeah, because in some of your recent episodes, you were talking about how, you know, your car got broken into, and look, that can happen anywhere in the world, I guess. But
oh yeah,
it's so hard to pass what's true from what's not true, because if you look at just like memes and stuff, it's basically like LA's a shithole. They've got apps where it shows where there's like feces on the ground, and you can you know, use that. And that's the kind of thing where you're like, you need an app to to avoid feces. That's crazy.
I was gonna say that's like so like that sort of a thing is so inner city. You know, the headlines are always about the like what's happening in the middle of the city, like the most crowded area, and that's where. Like,
is that Skid Row?
When you go
is that the middle of the city? I don't really know my geography of that.
Yeah, Skid Row is in the middle of downtown, or it's like right next to downtown. So, and that's where the yin yang of like in downtown, you have the like super bougie restaurants, and people go to downtown for the food, for the seafood, for the culture, for the fashion. And then if you take a wrong left, you're going to be in the middle of the most dangerous portion on earth.
Damn, that's crazy. The I always thought it was over exaggerated until when I was traveling. I met this American girl who she lived and worked on either sides of Skid Row, and so she had to travel across it, on a daily basis, twice a day. And she was just like, it was almost like she was recounting like war stories or PTSD sort of thing, because when she was describing it truly made me go like, whoa, that sounds really, really fucked up. That sounds crazy.
Yeah, man.
And which is very different from my impression of just America as a rather prosperous nation where, I don't know, I've heard it described as kind of like a jungle where it's kind of dog eat dog world. Whereas if you compare it to more like the European, perhaps Australian, is probably a little bit closer to this, where we have more safety nets, I guess, in certain cases where, healthcare and people are less likely to fall through the cracks, perhaps.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to fall through the cracks out here. That's the real thing, and that's
all those earthquakes, man. You just got a lot of cracks.
Yeah, I know, dude. I know. But California's going to break off soon, so that's going to be the real challenge. You got to jump over that chasm.
Yeah, that's it. So what actually drew you to California instead of LA? What was the main reasoning for that?
Yeah, so I really I wanted to move to New York mainly because of the propaganda. There's just so much things about New York, like, and when you really like dive into it, like you can become like just infatuated with it. And so there's a real I heart New York is a real thing, and I thought that would be the where I could do it. If you can go to New York, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And
what was making it in your mind? What would that visualization look like?
that continues to change. Like, it's always been movies, but when I was 20, I thought making it in New York would somehow mean, I was doing a podcast back then, so I wanted to do a podcast. I was doing a podcast, and
this is America Plus, yeah.
No, I was doing I was doing this thing called the Cole McCormick Show, which is. Yeah. It's an old feed. I changed the title. I was gonna change the show, but then I just didn't continue with anything. But it's still on SoundCloud. But I'm not sure if anyone can find it.
Yeah, I haven't come across that in just my random searchings of your names.
Yeah, it's like a crisscross of situations, like of different accounts. But I thought New York would be just like Broadway. Like, I really enjoyed Broadway. I wanted to try to dive into acting for that, because I really thought that I could go for it. But as soon as I got to New York, as soon as the plane landed, I knew it wasn't the move. I knew that I shouldn't be there. It just wasn't the thing. I was watching a lot of Casey Neistat as well. Do you know Casey Neistat? Yeah. So it was peak in the middle of him doing daily vlogs. And that's where a lot of the romance came for it as well. Just his editing, his music, his everything with it. Wow, that seems so cool. And I could do what Casey does, or I could do something cooler. I could do something similar. But I realized LA would just be smarter. LA would just be more comfortable. LA would be more practical for my family, because it's just an hour flight from where I am to where my family is. So compared to New York, it'd be 6 hours. Yeah, so just radically different.
Stretch, yeah, for sure. Yeah, cool. Yeah. And so what would you say how long have you been there now? 5-ish years?
6 years.
Right?
I moved here in 2017, so it's been 6 years.
Yeah. And have you I don't know, you were saying your definitions of making it have changed. How have they changed? From what to what would you say is changed in terms of your goals and ambitions?
I think when I was younger, I really wanted to have a lot of money, or I wanted to be famous, or I wanted to be a big actor. I wanted to be a big name. But as time has moved on, I've realized there's not a lot of value in that. and hearing things. I would listen to Kevin Smith. There's a director, Kevin Smith, and he's this guy who came up in the 90s. He was a part of the 1990s independent film renaissance.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. He was one of the first guys that I heard about the 1,000 fans. If you have 1,000 people supporting you, you're able to sustain your life. You're able to have a life. And that idea really intrigued me. I don't need to be the biggest. I just need to get the people that want to support me. And that made a lot of sense to me. So it's been a push and pull of that, because if you want to go down the path of having 1,000 people supporting you, then that means that you're going down the internet, you're going down the independent route. And when you're in Los Angeles and Hollywood, and at this time I was, when I moved out here, I immediately got a job at Warner Brothers Studios as a tour guide. It's a completely different system. It's a completely different hierarchy, completely different ladder, completely different relationships. So it's like these two completely different worlds that are sort of evolving at the same time. And I was like in between them. So, and lately I've chosen to go down the internet, go forward with the 1,000 fans, and sort of just wait for Hollywood to come to me when I get there.
Yeah, I'm glad you've came to that conclusion from it, because it's basically what I've seen as well. And anyone who chases fame, and fame in particular, just seems like not even a double-edged sword. It's like it's like a cleaver or something. Like, you get tiny little benefits on the blunt end, but the sharp end, you'll just get messed up in terms of your relations with people, being able to live a normal life, all those sorts of things. And then, the fact that most people are never going to make it. I really like Kevin Smith. I find him a pretty fascinating guy. People, Clerks and Jay and Silent Bob, they were never going to be massive. I mean, they still got into the movie theaters. I do remember seeing Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, I think it was. But that they're always going to be so niche, and having those 1,000 true fans is definitely the way to go if you want to express certain, I don't know, it's the cult classic type phenomena, where it's things which are unappreciated because they are usually independent and have like a certain vision to them, that even if they're maybe not, I somewhat wonder where a lot of cult classics, films and movies that are kind of discovered 5-10 years after they're released, if it's just that the technology and the timing of it, just they weren't able to get out as quickly to their intended audience, and that the timing was right, like for a weird, quirky kind of film which doesn't really make sense, but then it's got like hilarious, ridiculous things to it, like Super Troopers, for example. That's another pretty good cult classic type one. And it just, the distribution just wasn't there at the time, and it takes time to kind of filter out to all of those people who it's meant to find.
Yeah, man. The stories with the cult classics is always cemented within either video on demand or DVD rentals, and it's the movie just being around, and people just like seeing the cover and thinking it's interesting, or being willing to just like get a whatever movie and see if it's good. There's like a real romance with like going to Blockbuster and just like picking a movie that you really have no idea about, and maybe it's going to be good, maybe it won't be. Because growing up, my mom would always like, the rule would always like, we're getting 3 movies for the weekend, and then it's like one for Cole, one for the girls, and then one for mom and dad. And sometimes like you might pick something different. Yeah. And that's sort of been harder with streaming. It's sort of been harder with just the internet in general. But at the same time, I think it will get to a point. I think the internet will get to a point where you'll be able to browse somehow. You'll be able to browse what people have to offer. If the internet is somehow what is a copy of what everyone posts. Is like if the internet wants to have everything, wants to be like the information highway that it originally was. There's going to be a way for people to search historically, and for people to search people, And maybe it's just like a Wikipedia, maybe it's like something simple as that, but maybe there's a different situation. Like, we really don't know what history will look back on all the videos the current presidents have produced, regardless of the president, regardless of the video. We don't really know how they're going to be reserved or preserved. Of course, if it's like a government thing, it might be preserved in the Library of Congress, but like there's no like internet thing. We don't know how the internet is going to look at that history. So, but I think that you will be able to browse these things and you'll be able to discover something new. Like somehow that's going to happen, because it happens randomly all the time. People find an old video, people find a new video, people like the viral thing goes viral. I don't know how I have no idea how these things happen, but they always come from the most random places.
I've been spending a lot of time recently reading books. Like, I wish I brought it. It's just in my room over there. Called Book Wars, where it's talking about how it's a real deep dive into the ebook revolution of the 2010s, I guess, where things like the Amazon Kindle started coming out and how ebooks started to chew into the sales, the distribution, the production of physical, actual hard copy books and paperbacks and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing a bit of the same sort of research into what happened with the internet and blogging versus newspapers, for example, or we're seeing it kind of like another one again with V4V music, and we'll touch upon that in a second, but the streaming revolution as well. And all of these things, from what I kind of gather from it, is the technology enables just random everyday people to create to a higher level of production quality. So you don't need the big physical studios. So it opens access in that way. And then it opens access broadly across the world for people to get their music out or their digital content to anyone in the world. Once again, opening access to those 1,000 true fans, which are unlikely to all be in the suburb that I'm here in Brisbane, but you might have Cole in America, you might have some couple of people in England, and it's probably going to be related to English speaking countries, but who knows, even in the future that could change. And in terms of the findability of stuff, you sometimes hear things like there's too many options nowadays. It's as if it's a bad thing. I go into a supermarket and there's 20 brands of toothpaste, and there's too much. Like it's overwhelming, and that is a feeling to have. But the problem is not that there's too many things. It's just that you mentioned it. The search functions are not good enough, because if you had the ability to go like, I want a toothpaste which was made in Australia because that's important to me, doesn't have these sort of chemicals, is produced by this sort of conglomeration, I prefer it's this price range and this. If you had like the ability to really nail down quickly 6 or 7 search parameters, you'd find there's only 2 choices to choose between, and so that, I think a similar thing is going to happen with basically all movies, digital content, everything. Just the search functions are going to get better, and you will be able to find that particular niche thing. And then if you want to do the blockbuster experience, the Google I'm feeling lucky sort of tab that they used to have, that'll be option as well. So
mm-hmm.
yeah, the ability to have access to all of these things is not, that's not the problem. If anyone's thinking like, oh, there's going to be too much content, there's going to be too much anything, it's like, nah, you don't know much about history.
Yeah, you'll be able to find it. You'll be able to just seek what you're looking for, even if it's like AI created. There's been people saying AI is just going to like produce all the content, produce all the movies, produce all the songs. I really don't believe that at all.
Neither.
I don't know why I don't believe it, but I just don't. And people want to see your perspective. That's the entire purpose of art, to see your perspective.
There'll be a lot of that sort of content, and then but there's always going to be a need for, I want a thing that a real person has actually created. I don't want the digital stuff. And it's kind of like you want the higher the higher quality has a personal meaning, has a story to it, whereas the AI, unless it's got a really good story of like, this AI was forged in the dungeons of Mordor, and it was like it's like they're like a Kenyan AI that was fed on all of these sort of like random companies in Kenya or something, like unless it has a really good backstory to it, people won't be that interested. It'll be like the low quality, like I just want some elevator music, I don't really care where it's come from, that sort of thing.
Exactly. So I'm just not afraid of it, and I think people want to hear and see other people.
Definitely. That kind of gets us into maybe the value for value section, which was I'm really wondering how you came across value for value. Was it through Adam Curry? Was it through No Agenda? How did you get introduced to that kind of concept of value for value?
Yeah, definitely through No Agenda. I started listening to No Agenda in 2021, I believe. I think it was after Adam Curry's second appearance on Joe Rogan.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and just listen to it. During the pandemic, I was just looking for information. That was like still in the period when like we didn't know if things would be good or not, or things would like open up or not. It was like LA was pretty COVID strict. And I was just like looking for information, and Adam Curry was providing information about COVID and the narratives around COVID. And I saw a lot of value in that deconstruction. And because I'm a person who likes podcasts, and because I'm not intimidated by a 3-hour audio file like a lot of people, I would just listen to the whole thing. And during the donation segments, he would mention value for value. He would mention donations. He would mention, I think he was promoting podcasting 2.0, maybe. I don't remember exactly, but there was like this like bounce around.
What was your initial impression during the donation segments? Did it make sense from the get-go, or you're like, oh, this is weird?
No, it totally made sense to me. Like, I just saw it as a legitimate version of what I want to do, really, because he talks about doing it for like 14, 15 years. And I think there might have been some episodes in those years where he tells like a brief story of how long they've been doing it. And, hearing those stories of a person actually succeeding with that vision it's really impactful. And I was like, okay, here's the guy. And then when I found out who Adam Curry was, I didn't know he invented podcasting. I didn't know he was like involved with all these things, and he was super focused on freedom of speech and all these things. And I was like, dang, like what's going on? And then I started listening to podcasting 2.0. And that's when I really try to like be my biggest podcast nerd self. Like I really try to like understand what's going on, because even though I'm a podcaster, I really don't. I don't care about the technicals. I don't care about calling it a tag. I don't care about calling it a chapter tag or something like that. I don't really care about the namespace. I guess.
Yeah.
But I cared about the Bitcoin. I cared about freedom. I cared about preserving free speech, and value for value was that system to interact with people. There was no other way for it to happen. Like there's no other way you can have an honest interaction.
Yeah. So was that what spurred you to start the America Plus podcast? As in you now saw, okay, there's cool new things happening here, and I can integrate into the system. Like the value for value model, they were doing it since like 2008 or something, but the ability to do it now, I think for everyone in a manner where it's just within the actual apps themselves, like it just makes so much more sense. Whereas the route they were going down through PayPal is it's very specific. It's very almost like outdated in a way, if I had to put it in a certain context. And so like what problem did it solve for you? I guess a value for value and podcasting 2.0 that you might have experienced when you were doing your other podcast.
I definitely felt that linking to like a Cash App or a PayPal was like weird. Like, I don't know how many people have that app. I don't know how many people really want to give me that money.
It's very specific. There's no Cash App here in Australia, for example.
Exactly. So If my thing is being broadcasted globally, like, but I don't have a global payment thing like that, that's weird. Then I really got to focus in on a certain area. And I realized that value for value was just more honest with people. Like, if you really think there's value in what I'm doing, then show me. And that is the metric. That is how I measure the value. You know, you measure of the value of a YouTube video by all the analytics that YouTube tells you are good. And they're in charge of what's good. Like, what's a good analytic? But I don't know what a good analytic is. I don't know what a good show is. I don't really know. Like, I think I know what I'm saying something good, but I don't really know what people are vibing with. And so I saw it as an opportunity to really prove what I'm doing is the right path and what I'm saying is the right thing to say. And there'll be correction if I stumble.
Yeah. And so funnily enough, this is one of the times where I actually haven't done all my research that I normally should, because I've listened to, a lot of America Plus, probably at least from episode 50 onwards, I'd say, more or less. But a lot of the earlier episodes I haven't actually checked out. So what were your kind of intentions with starting it then? What were you imagining the show to be, and has it changed much since then?
Yeah, the vision's been like pretty consistent. It was always about narratives. I've always been worried about like the narratives around me, the narratives that I'm reading, the narratives that my friends are reading, because I mean, COVID is the example. Just the narratives that you were absorbing during COVID affected your life. And I wanted a good life. I wanted a calm life. And I chose to get into breathing, you know, and when you look into narratives around breathing and yoga and these sorts of things, like, it's a different narrative than put on a mask. It's a completely different narrative. So, and it's like, how do I communicate that? How can I talk about that sort of a thing? How can I talk about my experience? And just trying to stay sane. Like, I needed to start a podcast because I wanted to stay sane about, like, within that moment. And I wanted to try to help people think about things. Maybe I could talk about the narratives in a different way, through a different angle, through a different prism. Because that's really all it is. You know, the reason why anyone believes something is because of how it was told, the way it was told. There's a comedian, Bernie Mac. He says, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. You know, the reason you laugh at a comedian is because of how they said it. I could repeat any comedian and you're probably not going to laugh as much. And so that's a real thing. And the way that the news talks, you know, if you want to get really loopy doopy with it, you know, some people might say the news is casting spells on you and that's all negative energy and with their stories. And, you know, I'm trying to put the positive stories out there. I'm trying to like call bullshit to where you got to call that at. And that's where it started. Like, I just wanted to speak truth to power and try to be honest and try to just stay sane.
Yep. And so I'm guessing this was where you were experimenting with the value for value model for the first time. What did you try and do anything with your other show? What was it called? The Cole McCormick Experience?
Yeah, Cole McCormick show. Cole McCormick show, just basic.
And did you have any interactions with your audience then, or trying to monetize or connect with people in that show? And then how does that differ from when you started America Plus?
Yeah, I didn't have any idea about how to make any money with it. I really just didn't have any clue what I was doing. I don't remember what I wanted from it. I think I just wanted to start a podcast. I was watching a lot of Gary V, and I was like really inspired by like just putting myself out there on the internet. And so it was really just a passion thing. Just, let's do a podcast. That sounds awesome. And I did some interviews. I talked to a couple of my friends, talking about a lot of the topics I talk about now. You know, I talked about the Bible. I talked about Star Wars. I talked about, you know, my personality's been fairly consistent. What was the other part of your question? What was the other section?
So you then, when you were starting America Plus, I'm guessing you started off value for value kind of from the get-go?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was because of value for value that I started America Plus. I saw that was the payment system. That was the human interaction. That was the thing that could get me involved with anyone, whether it be online or in Hollywood, value for value can extend to any person hearing me talk and wanting to support me or wanting to support my movie. And that's when I thought about this idea of, what if I'm a podcaster and I'm making short films, and I try to have these two things blend in together? And that's been like an ongoing experiment, like an ongoing thing that I want to try to produce, like value for value cinema, value for value movies, or just have some sort of function of value for value with my art. And somehow that's going to create a bigger network, or just a larger tribe of creative people around me.
And what were your first experiences where you, I guess you're still here 100 episodes later, so obviously value for value is the model is doing something for you. But when you're starting off, it's difficult, man. It's and I know this from experience, where multiple different shows, and some of them I'm still really trying to like push it forward. But when you first start off and you start saying like, hey, I'd appreciate some value back, and then you explain how people can do it, and then you hear nothing but crickets. What was it that kind of convinced you, or was there any experiences which made you go like, holy shit, this is the way to go?
Yeah, I just knew I was early. That's really why I was never afraid of the lack of boosts or the lack of sats flowing to me, because I knew I was early, and I knew that it's going to be a slow build. What Adam Curry says about podcasting is it's a gradual build. And that's always been something that I've been seeking. Whenever it comes to learning, I'm always a very gradual learner. Maybe I might take my time with things, but in my head, it's like it's a very constant, slow progression. Something about me, I'd rather do something slow and inch my way up than have a spike up and like fall down and have another spike up and fall down. Even though that still happens, but regardless, I just wanted to go through that, really.
It's funny how I've got a very similar mentality, which is it's small incremental changes, and it's I never really thought of it as a kind of positive thing in the sense that I know I have the capacity to do things quicker. So, for example, this very show, I have had in my mind for a fair while, probably like, I don't know, 6 months at least, where I could implement a lot more of the new tags and features if I spend some time to do the technical things, such as being able to kind of like have self-host in a certain manner, or at least have my audios hosted with a proper kind of like company that knows how to distribute content. So this would be like Buzzsprout or one of the podcasting pod home. And then just create my own XML file and then be able to add things in and alter that and change that. But I haven't like pulled the trigger and spent the day to a week of just 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, whatever, figuring it all out and being able to do it. And instead I'd spend that time out over a 6-month period and get there slowly. And I always kind of saw that as like, I'm just being not lazy per se, but my priorities, I'm always spread across different things. Like I want to be trying to learn a new language at the same time that I'm trying to improve my flexibility, at the same time I'm doing the podcast, at the same time I'm like reading books and things like this. But I think there's something to that. There's actually, I don't know how to express it, but the slow build actually is the thing that I'm looking for. It's kind of similar to what you were saying just then.
Yeah,
do you apply that to anything else in your life?
I try to at least. I've been getting better at it. I've always been that person doing a lot of things as well. So I've always been learning. Like when I was in high school, I would balance my time between school, football, and church and theater. And there'd be like seasons when one of those things would be heavier and seasons when one of those might be lighter. And I might have to learn a song in theater. And then I also have to learn brand new plays within football. And then I need to during church, I would like actually talk to kids. I would like teach kids. So I would have to like learn about some verse in the Bible. Like, what does this Bible verse mean? And then explain it to a child. So I've always been like trying to like learn in increments. Like every week was a new verse, or every week was a new play, or something like that, man, or a new step, like in the dance, you know? And you always learn the dance. Like, if you ever learn a dance, you always learn it in sections. You learn it in progressions. So you learn one chunk, and then you master that chunk, and then you get the other chunk, and then it all connects, you know?
Yeah. I suppose relating that back to the podcast again would be with the growth of value for value on your show, and I think you've gotten to the point where you could definitely say you've got a couple of those true fans. Joel W, for example, I'm probably up there as well.
Yeah,
where it's you've kind of found at least one or two of them. And did it feel like a grind to get there? Were there any days where you're like, oh man, this actually is hard, and it is too slow? Because that's the other thing with doing the kind of slow, methodical approach is you can grind yourself into the dust and kind of you think you're like inching slowly up an incline, but it's actually flat, and you're kind of deceiving yourself.
Yeah, it could actually just be flat, and you're dragging your feet with some unnecessary weight.
Yeah.
I thought about that during the early days. It's hard when you have like 2 weeks straight and no boosts, but you just got to like move through that. You know, I've had losses before. I've lost a game. I've lost girlfriends. I've made mistakes. I felt embarrassed. So going into America Plus, it was truly just no fear of failing, because it's a podcast. You can't fail. You only fail a podcast when you stop doing it. You only fail when you stop. Exactly. So, and I knew I wasn't going to stop. Like, value for value is forever. The podcast is forever. Podcasting is life. And it's the only way that I'll be able to truly express myself forever. And that's why I love it. That's why I do it. That's why it's necessary.
Yeah, for sure. You did this cool experiment, which I was following, called the V4V Sat Slinger, where it was basically you were utilizing Fountain to do what I think it's, let's just call it satvertising, where you pay to get your show promoted, but the payment actually isn't going all to Fountain, much like it would where if you do like advertising on Facebook or on Instagram or on wherever, they just take all the money and then your stuff gets shown to viewers of that app as an ad. Whereas this one, it's actually 80% of the sats or of the money that you put in goes to the people who are actually listening. And you were doing that for a fair while. What are the results from that? Did you find were the interactions different than they are now when you're not doing that? Did people stick around?
Yeah, the original idea for it was to utilize Fountain. I really enjoyed Fountain, and it was like one of the only apps that I could really understand and send to my mom. You know, so my mom could understand how to support me. Mm-hmm. And it was just utilizing like all those features. Like, how can I use Fountain? So I have their wallet, I have their promotions, I have their clips. I was like really into like using their clips or trying to use their clips for a minute. And I thought giving money to my audience was a good idea, and maybe that would get them to stay. And maybe I could make like a little special for them to like remember to listen to the ad. That's where Sat Slinger came in. It originally stemmed from I was just trying to figure out like how could I do this? Like what would make sense? What would be like the title of a promotion like that? And there's this old SpongeBob episode where SpongeBob is working late at night and he gets told the story of the hash slinging slasher.
Yeah.
And that's where it came from. That's where Sat Slinger came from, was just me saying hash bringing, hash dinging, sat slinging, and just like boom, ding, 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 ding. Like I was like, oh my God, Shannon, I got it. And I was like, shit, it's Sat Slinger. It's Sat Slinger. And that's why if you go back to the first Sat Slinger, it's SpongeBob with the America Plus for the spatula.
Yeah, I remember
that's why it's SpongeBob. So that's why that is. says, because SpongeBob is that's the origin story of us all.
Nice. And do you think people have stuck around from those experiments that you were doing?
Yes and no. Yeah, I know Joel W. I think he listened to a Sat Slinger, and that's how he found out about me. And a lot of people that I see streaming in Sats were names that I originally saw from the promotions. It's like a handful, not a lot of people. A lot of the accounts were also just like random, like users, just random users with no usernames.
8 digits after 10 digits after.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to those early episodes, I'm really saying at user 490, like saying a million letters, and it just wasn't a thing yet, And I thought it was a good idea, and I committed to doing it for a year. I would spend around. I mean, at first I was spending like $300 on the promotion, which is way too much money. That was that COVID money. And as that COVID money decreased, it was getting less and less. And the minimum you could do was like 50. So I started doing only $50. And I would always give my audience like above 1,000. I always wanted to give them above 1,000 sats because I thought that'd be like a good thing. Like I knew that cheap people would give you like maybe like 10 sats or 20 sats or something like, and that's just like not an incentive. Like what's the incentive to listen to the ad? To get the sats. So I wanted to give people sats to listen to the ad. So I was trying to maximize the promotion. And I'm not sure if I did it right. I'm not sure if that's how Fountain wanted to structure it. Probably not. But it was a way of me initiating value for value as well. I wanted to give what better way to give my audience value than to give them money first? And I saw it as like a weird investment in the audience.
Yeah, it's like proof that you value your product so much that you're kind of like willing to not only give it away for free, but even give it away with some money attached. I did the same thing. Like I did a couple of promotions on there. I always viewed it more as just a little thing here and there, just as kind of a reminder rather than really trying to give the money to the audience. It was more just like a kind of repetitive thing. So like every 3 months or something, I'd do an episode, and especially if it was an episode that kind of made sense, like having Adam Curry on, or perhaps Dave Jones on, or like a particular episode related to Bitcoin where it kind of made sense that you would see that in the Fountain app where people would kind of understand, I guess. I was trying to maximize it for people who would understand value for value in some way. And funnily enough, one of the things that I've realized is that even if people understand Bitcoin, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to understand value for value. I think it's its kind of own separate box, and it's more related to, I think it's something related to like the open and transparency. When people value that highly, they're more likely to really get into value for value. And perhaps people who are more on the extroverted side of things, where they enjoy those call outs, they enjoy the interaction. People are just more invested and are more active, I guess, and view podcasting as a large portion of their life. Like they would maybe call themselves a podcast listener rather than people who kind of just like casually tune in. Which is why I think it's actually been rather hard on YouTube to do value for value, because I think a lot of the audience there is kind of like passive. It's a passive watching experience. It's not necessarily people sitting down and being like, I'm going to watch a YouTube video now. It's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's definitely different. I think when you do a podcast, it's when you choose to listen to a podcast, I think you're choosing to listen to something intently. That's why people were really into Serial, that crime podcast, because like you're actually like listening to a story, you're listening to something that's like grabbing you, and you want to go into that. Or I want to listen to No Agenda, and I want to hear how the clips are. I want to hear what the news is saying, or whatever. When you're on YouTube, you're sort of it's just casual TV. It's the equivalent to TV in the 80s. It's just on.
Yeah. I could be wrong in that in a certain sense as well, in that a lot of people who got into podcasting was it's because it's something that you can do. It is that passive activity when you're washing the dishes. You can just chuck it on. If you're outside mowing, you can put on some earbuds, or when you're traveling to and from work, that sort of thing. And YouTube can be used in a similar sort of way as well. So it's not necessarily. I guess maybe this just gets to the point that, you know, I would be willing to bet that 4% that Adam Curry talks about in terms of people who contribute back monetarily, I'd be willing to make like a bet that 4 to 10% of people who are actually consuming a YouTube video or a podcast are super engaged into it. And I put myself in this camp as well, where there's certain podcasts which I put on that are kind of filler, their background, and it'll be during a certain activity where I don't have full 100% focus. And then there's other ones where it's like, okay, no, like podcasting 2.0 on a Saturday morning for me here, that's where it's like, if I can't pay full attention to it, if I, chuck it on and I have it next to me and I'm doing something on my laptop, which actually requires a little bit of thought, I'll just turn it off, because I actually do want to listen to it and give it my full attention. So yeah, it's probably more related to how people are utilizing it, not necessarily the medium itself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the information in it, like, doesn't matter what. I don't think it matters what, if you're on YouTube or a podcasting app, like, you're looking for the information. And if you have the personality, if you like the long form stuff, like, only recently my younger sister Hannah, she's been like starting to listen to more podcasts just because she has a different job and she has a bit more time, and she's just willing to, it's just something to do, just something to listen to while you're doing other things. And I think it opens up an opportunity to just hear a lot more people.
Yeah. When I was looking at this book I was talking about, Book Wars, where it was talking about the digital revolution of electronic books, ebooks, and a lot of people, when the Kindle and iPads, for example, tablets were coming out, they were thinking that the book itself could radically change and it actually wouldn't be a book anymore. And I forget the exact terminology, but instead of being in a new format, it was a new medium. So the book, for example, most books, they've got, a certain amount of pages, they've got a certain amount of words, they're roughly usually between 80 to 500, 600, something like that. And the spacing in paragraphs and things like this. And they were saying, there was thoughts that the ebook would not just necessarily be an electronic version of a book, but it could become a totally new medium where you could have clickable links and perhaps audio files that were coming up. You could have, if you were reading during the book, sounds emanating from the background, which would match the ambience of what you were actually reading about and things like this. And that never really turned out to be the case. I was wondering, with value for value, whether a similar sort of thing would happen because we're starting to see a lot of collaboration, and I'm trying to be actively part of this, and I know you are as well, where if you go onto the Mere Mortals book reviews now, for example, you'll hear Cole doing some voice acting for me and reading out quotes from the books. And if you go onto his show, you'll hear about some music that he's playing at the end, and when he's got a guest on, including a split for that guest and things like that. Do you think that the podcast could or would change with the implementation of being able to put in splits and to, I don't know, incentivize collaboration in new ways, perhaps?
Absolutely. Yeah, man. The more opportunity you can split the earning with the team, the more collaboration you're going to have. Like, value for value is that system where you can get your friends together, you can make a thing, and then you can put it out online and you can link up everyone's wallets. And then whoever sees it in the world is like, whoever sees it and whoever has access to give that money to you, like, it's going to be evenly dispersed. Like, I don't know any other system like that. Every other system, you got to like get lawyers, and you got to like go through banks, and you got to go through all these loops, and you got to there's all these things. With value for value, it's like heaven. It's like simple. It's like bliss. It's like you don't just you agree on the split amongst yourselves, and your split is determined upon what your group thinks. It's like there's like an inner democracy happening. There's I feel like smaller groups deciding things on a smaller within smaller groups is healthier in a lot of situations. And so value for value allows you to make the decisions on how to make money on art and how to make money producing things in a more fair way.
Have you had any experiences? Can you compare that to, so for example, Magic Mushroom Fun Time, which you've now done and put out, which is a short film, and we'll get onto that in a second. You've got splits for the videographer, for yourself, for Shannon, who's also appears as an actress in it, for the music, and Homeless Moses. What is there any like comparison you can make between creating that film and then creating one of your other ones, where if there was a way to earn money, it would have to go through this kind of like old system of like, oh, one person gets it and they decide to split it up, or anything like that?
Yeah, man. For movies, for any other movie that I might have done, like there's really like no way to do that. My last short film, The Break-In, that I put out in 2020, there's no way to make money on that. Even if you put it in a film festival, you're not going to make any money. It's not really possible. You have to pay to put your movie in a film festival. So it's similar to the Fountain thing, where you got to like pay to promote. And if someone in that audience is connected to the studios or connected to financing, that's where that value comes from, or that's where the value of doing and engaging in that system comes from. Value for value is radically different. So like there's really just no other examples. Value for value is like, I'm just in love with it. This is like what I want to do. I'm trying to tell all my friends about it, and it's like they don't understand it. And a lot of them don't understand Bitcoin, but that's not the problem. Like you said earlier, it's like Bitcoin is its own box, value for value is its own box. And so I've sort of tried to just lean into the value for value box, just explain value for value, and just say, hey, just link up a Bitcoin wallet. Just like try to make Bitcoin this little thing that you just plug in, because that's what it is.
What have their reactions to it been? What is the hold up that you think that they've struggled with the most? And I imagine most of your friends would be, are they sort of in the same kind of industry of like artistic pursuits, or this? Yeah,
totally. Like all my friends, like they're going for the career. They're going for Hollywood. They're going for their thing, whether it be stand-up comedy or music or directing or writing, acting, everything that you can imagine. I have friends who are like going for it, and it's just not clear for them,
Yeah. I'm just really interested in like what the kind of hold up, or the thing that stops someone from getting it, because I mean my story is similar to yours. When I heard about value for value, I was like, holy fuck, this thing, like this solves so many of the problems I was having, which was mine were particularly related to getting interaction with the audience. I always found that really difficult because there was no native medium way to do it through where they're already at. They'd always have to go to Facebook, to Instagram, or some other bullshit place, and then there was like a large likelihood I'd never see it as well, because I'd get scammers on Instagram. I'd get other people commenting about other random things on Facebook related to perhaps the post and not the audio, which are different things. And so I really like value for value just clicked with me. Hence why I started the value for value show, the podcast. And yeah, I'm just curious as to what in particular they struggle with. Is it the money sort of aspect? Do they get held up on that? Do they do they not have the same problems perhaps that I might have had or you would have had with, in terms of like being able to connect with the audience?
It's mainly just people. There's a lot of creative people who don't put any value on the internet, or just don't put any attention. Like the internet is just mindless scrolling for a lot of people, including creative people. And there's very few creative people who really see the internet and posting things online as a real opportunity to express yourself. And people are waiting for the casting call, or they're waiting for um the other random job that they have, like they're waiting for the promotion for their current job, or they're just trying to have some sort of stability, like they're trying to have like the sure in like money. And the way that you get the sure in money is when you got to hit that home run, and you got to somehow just make it big in that. And you got to somehow just, if you're a musician, if you're a musician and you can somehow make a relationship with someone who's in the movie business, and you can get, you can like get hired on a set, for like a day, that can be like 2 months worth of money, for a lot of people. So there's like a higher amount of money that you can get, and also within a shorter amount of time, but you don't know when that short amount of time is going to happen, because there's a lot of time in between of you going to parties and you just trying to live in LA, trying to interact with people, trying to make those connections. So people don't see the value in waiting and making a connection. That's what I see.
So it's almost like the realness aspect. It's the digital nature of it kind of being ephemeral. It's not something easy to grasp, and that you can have a physical object in your hand, or you get the real life interaction with that person. I certainly value the real life. There's more intense. This would be a more intense experience if we were face to face rather than doing it electronically. But that's not to say there's no value in being able to do it electronically as well via, like, Jesus, man, you're all the way in LA and I'm here in Brisbane. So yeah, that's a really interesting aspect. I hadn't thought of that before, where it's almost the that digital portion that's the holdup, because it solves so many other things. For example, one of the things that I think is most critical about value for value, it's peer to peer. There is no middleman, so it comes directly from you to me, which is why the linkage with Bitcoin is even better, and you can kind of get rid of the PayPal type scenario, or the Cash App, or the Buy Me a Coffee, or the Patreon, or any of those sorts of services. So yeah, okay, no, thanks for that, man. That's real interesting.
I mean, it's weird too, because you would think a lot of creative people would be open to new ways to make money or new ways to produce their art, and they just aren't. There's a lot of people, like, they might think about YouTube, but then they're thinking about YouTube in a YouTube sense. They're not thinking about what they can create or what they want to create. That's where I've like differed from a lot of people. I've always, in the back of my head, I've always really said, like, I want to produce a legitimate movie and just put it out online. Like, what if you just knew that what if you knew that a director was just going to post a movie one day? Like, what if Michael Bay just posted the new Transformers on his YouTube channel? Like, would that make Transformers less than? And there's memes around Transformers. That's just Michael Bay came to me first thing. But does it really make the movie any less impactful if it's online? And I don't think it does. If Christopher Nolan, or like, and there's value in the movie theater, there's a lot of emotions about the internet, because as a director myself, I value the movie theater experience, and I value that system as well. You buy the ticket to sit in the seat to watch the thing, and the internet, I post it, and then everyone just sees it, and then I'm like, hey, if you want to support, go to this link. Like, it's a completely flipped upside down system.
It's getting back to that
value.
Intentionality. When you go into a movie theater, you're very intentional about what you're doing and why you're going there for. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I want to, like, there's a way that those two things can be balanced. And I want to balance those two things. I want to be able to be a name that people can see and hear, and they can be like, okay, this guy's cool. This guy's honest. This guy makes honest art, and it's actually pretty good. It's actually entertaining. So maybe they might be more willing to pay attention or to follow me, when you look at like the most famous people on earth, you know, going back to fame, they don't need to do much to have something go viral because everyone's already paying attention to them. And so, like a healthier version of that, the 1000 fans version of that is to just be as honest as you can with what you want to express and to try to just put yourself in the best position to have your community support you. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. Let's jump on to Magic Mushroom Fun Time then, because this, I think, wraps up basically everything that we're doing. Do you want to give us a quick overview for those who don't know what Magic Mushroom Fun Time is, and your whole process, when it was released, how it was released?
Yeah. So Magic Mushroom Fun Time is my most recent short film. It's been in the making for a little over a year. I had the idea for it November or December 2022, and it just came out December 26th of this month. So just a couple days before this recording, which is legit.
December 6th, 2023 is
December 26th, yeah. And then it was a combination of value for value music, AI imaging, and traditional filmmaking, along with a little bit of magic mushrooms. There was a big inspiration to me to combine these things and to just somehow express how I have felt on the days that I experienced psilocybin, and what I would see, how the sun would feel like, and stuff like this. And the whole story of how it got made, like I had to change a bunch of plans, and it's not the original vision, but it's what came about during the making of, and it's what it is, you know. The movie, I have this philosophy of like the movie sort of tells me how it should be made. I try to, when it comes to the philosophy of me gradually getting better, I wanted to gradually make this movie and sort of allow the movie to tell me what direction I need to go into. And it's been an evolution of that. At first, it started out with, I wanted it to be purely animation. And then it sort of evolved into, well, maybe I can put a little bit of live action. And then it evolved into, well, maybe I can use AI for the animation. And then it was, well, how am I going to like edit this? What story am I telling? And then summer 2023, value for value music comes into play. I'm like, okay, here's this music now. And I could almost visualize how these things could be combined. And I'm just lucky enough to see the opportunity with it. And I want it to be an example of value for value cinema. I don't know in what other ways that I can do that, but I know that value for value can touch cinema. It can touch movies. And so we're just moving through the early stages of that.
Yeah, and that's what really fascinated me about it as well. It kind of reminds me of when this was a year or two ago, there was this I was real into podcasting 2.0, and then I heard about these guys, Sir Spencer and Abel Kirby, who were creating the first kind of like album using all the new tags and being able to do it value for value only. And it was kind of weird because I remember listening to this podcast they had called Ablecraft, which was about their whole experience of creating it, and they'd have these kind of like weekly catch-ups where they'd do boosts and things like that. And it was mostly them talking about the stems and how they hadn't recorded this or problems they were having with the MIDI, and then they'd meet up sometimes in person. And I remember just listening to this and being like, why am I listening to this? This is super strange. It's like it's not what you would have called a real educational podcast. It's not particularly a podcast which was entertaining per se, but it kind of felt like it was something important was going on. And they then ended up releasing, funnily similar enough to you, except earlier on actual Christmas Day, like you were trying to.
I know.
The what's it called? The Abel and the Wolf was their kind of value for value music album that they put out, and they had chapter art, which was created by visual artists who were almost imagine it as like the song art or the album art that you would find within a traditional CD perhaps, but it was now all digital, of course. And They had a pretty good experience with that. They earned, a whole bunch of Satoshis from that, and they could then compare that to like, we only got 2,000 streams or something from people listening in, but we earned, a couple of $100. Compare that to Spotify, where if you get 2,000 streams, you'll get 0.001 cent or something like that. And I kind of had a similar experience with I think America Plus, where I was listening to you. Now, you actually are super entertaining, so and educational, so don't take that the wrong way. But yeah, it was kind of the same thing where I was like, oh shit, yeah, Cole's doing something really cool here. And Magic Mushroom Fun Time was this kind of collaborative effort where I would say it's probably the first video that I know per se, which had these elements of adding what would have been traditional cinema, a videographer, music, an actress or an actor, and visual elements, and then being able to create that to something that is value for value. Like, it's a video with value for value in mind. It was created for that purpose, and I think that's probably one of the first ones that I've seen, at least, which was like that.
Yeah, I hope it is. I hope it's the very first one. That'd be so cool if I could just like claim that I'm the first value for value director or something like that.
Well, if you start doing it now, it helps.
Yeah. I'll do it right now. I own it. V4V, I know.
V4V Cinema. I think you gave it a good title. V4V Cinema was
yeah.
And so for those who are wondering, if you actually want to get access to that, so you put this out. It was actually through my suggestion, because I knew kind of the areas where you could roughly put out a video and this would work. And so you put it out on No Agenda Tube, you put it out on everywhere, which I think is the correct way of doing things. So you put it out on YouTube and Twitter and like places where you can't use the value for value system. But on No Agenda Tube, it has the properties of an actual podcast as well. So if you go to places like Podcast Guru, bring it up on your phone, you can actually watch the video of it, in there. So
wait, are you serious?
Yeah, man. Yeah. That's why I suggested No Agenda Tube. So if you go to Podcast
didn't know
Guru,
that. Wait, I did not know that.
I didn't think you would. So I was going to bring this up on here. So I'm just bringing it up on my phone now. So if you type in Magic Mushroom Fun Time on your podcast app,
dude, this is what I wanted.
It'll come up.
Yes.
And
holy crap!
So people can watch it within the actual app itself, and it'll play as a video.
Goodness. Oh my god!
So some of these are not fully video enabled. I'm not sure in Fountain it'll work like that, but Podcast Guru it'll play the music. It'll do the splits correctly. Yeah. All that sort of jazz.
Oh, this is crazy. I didn't know it was going to put it on the apps. I thought it was just on No Agenda Tube, dude. Oh my god.
No, that's why I recommended No Agenda Tube.
Dude, it's all okay. Then the answers are already here, dude. The answers are here, my friend. This is real life. Value for value cinema is legitimate. Wow. Oh my god. This is real.
Yes. So definitely highlight that when you're and some of these are great because you can start including links like it'll work on Podverse, for example. In Podverse, you can get actual links. So when you're doing your, like social posts and things like that, you can start putting it out there. So you can actually link people directly to where you can do value for value, which is what that's the dream, right? You don't want to link someone to the YouTube to then be able to tell them to go over to No Agenda Tube to that sort of thing. So
wow, that's phenomenal. That's insane, dude. I was hoping that would happen. I was hoping that would be a thing, and now it's just wow. That's a surprise. This is legitimate. I'm blown away right now.
I know, it's so cool, right? When you get to experience these things for the first time, because I've utilized a variety of these different ones, just experimentations with like the 3Speak feeds is where you can do something similar, but you don't have control over the splits. No Agenda Tube is good because you can have control over the splits, but that's only, I think that might be at the channel level, not at the episode level. So if you put out 2 or 3 videos, you wouldn't be able to alter it per episode, I don't believe. So there's the thing, man, like all these things are getting built out. We're we're like, so you came into podcasting 2.0 2021, I believe. That's sounded about right.
Around that, yeah. Around that year, yeah.
Which was similar to me. I think it was early 2021, and man, so much has just changed since then. It's so being able to play a video like that is just, it's seamless. Like you just type it in the app, bam, comes up, and you press play and it plays. And so all of this is, it feels like it's getting to that breaking point where it's just like, I could just see regular people being able to use these things, and they don't need to know about Bitcoin. They don't even necessarily need to know about value for value. I think it's better if they know and participate, but it's getting to the point where I think you'll be able to start creating things, and people will just be like, oh, it makes sense that I would say comments on something in the actual podcasting app, and it gets to the podcaster, and I don't have to go to all of the social media and seek them out, or try and find their email, or click on this link to go to this place.
Yeah, man, dude, that's we're slowly seeing it being built out, man. That's why. Okay, right now, what I just saw my short film on a podcast app. That's insane. That's insane. And I want people to be able to just like discover a bunch of different movies through that. I used to have this iPod Classic. Did you ever have the iPod Classic, or did you ever have the iPod?
I had a couple of them. I had the kind of like long, thin one, and then a square one. Yeah.
I had the square one, dude. I had not even the square. I had the rectangle iPod Classic. That is what it was called.
It was pretty thick, right? It was a centimeter.
It was thick boy. Thick boy,
my mom
dude.
had that one.
100.
I'd use it.
Yeah, dude. I bought it. I was 168 gigabytes, and it was the biggest one. And I bought Iron Man. Yeah, man. I bought Iron Man. I bought Tropic Thunder. I bought the South Park movie. I bought episodes of Modern Family. Like, I bought these things to have on my iPod. And that's where I also listened.
It was about the size of your thumb, right? It
was like you ever see the movie thumbs? Tropic Thunder? Yeah, man. It's like the size of that. That's the size of my eye. But like, I wanted to have movies next to my music. I wanted to have that because I had that. That's what iPod gave to you. And this is a whole new version of open distribution, and having movies and music and podcasts be all in the same area. And that's really impactful. That's really insane. We just need more people to know Bitcoin.
Yeah. And it's getting there, man. It'll take a while, and it's just creating those user experiences, being able to do it more easily, day by day. Not day by day, year by year, year by year. It's a slow grow. It is super slow. But the experience of being able to, and this was what was really cool. So I watched it first on Twitter, because when you first put it out, I saw the social post, and I was like already on my laptop. I'm like, all right, I'll just watch it there. And then later on the next day, I think I watched it on No Agenda Tube, and then I checked it out on YouTube. And then just this morning, I was doing it on the podcast apps, and on your latest episode, you played just the music as well. So I got the audio only version in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And you do get different experiences when you're on these sort of things. And I just got to say, for myself, it feels better when I know that I'm streaming in sats whilst listening to it. When I click the boost button and I can see the confetti fly, and know that it's gone to the 4 or 5 different people in the splits, it just makes me feel better as well. It's like, yes, this is a much this is an enhanced experience.
Yeah, man, I'm happy you feel that way too, because like, imagine feeling that way for a big movie. Like, imagine knowing that you could actually support George Lucas, or like support your favorite artist. Like, that's really what I think about. Like, imagine you're in the 1970s and you just find this weird nerd, George Lucas, and he's like posting about his little Star Wars movie. And like, imagine just being able to support him. Like, he's making shorts. Like, hey, here's a little Star Wars short. Like, everything, all the experiments that they did, all the test footage that they did. Like, just imagine all that was put online as if it is now. And imagine you could like support that. That's how I see that. That's how I see this. I want to have this like open sourced, decentralized, value for value Star Wars experience, where an actual universe can be made and people can see that being built in real time and support it as it's going. And it's not some lame Patreon. It's like you're literally just like you're giving it to the artist when they really deserve it. And that's fair.
Yeah. The funny thing when I compare it to something like the traditional cinema now, and I know a little bit of this because I tried out some like just like extra work. I tried out being a little bit in that scene just to see what it was like. And we've got a place called Movie World here on the Gold Coast, which is not too far from where I live, where they do big budget films like Aquaman. Is it Aquaman? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Cool.
And so you do get kind of like a little bit of the industry and a taste of it. And I always found it really funny where I met this girl who was an extra in one of I think it was Aquaman or Aquaman 2 or whatever. And she was telling me about how they would, take their phones at the start of the day and they weren't allowed to post anything. They weren't allowed. And all of this was done for the kind of secrecy aspect of, they don't want leaked footage of the set or of the actors or things like this. And I always thought that was funny in the sense that, man, like some of your biggest and like she was a chick who'd probably have like thousands, if not tens of thousands of followers on the various social platforms and things like this. And like in terms of promotion, you couldn't ask for anyone better to be like promoting the movie in the sense of here's like a selfie of her in front of the set and exposing that to a super wide audience. And this is where I think that sort of V4V kind of comes in, where if you were going to release like a full feature length cinema film, there's no way that you could include the thousands of splits which are needed for every single person who appeared on that. But this is where I can imagine things like, if she's doing like her own little value for value sort of thing, and she includes like 20% for just a big pooled fund or something, and every time she takes a Snapchat or a video or something, and people were like, oh my god, so excited for the new movie coming in, and part of it goes to them. This is where I can just see like the money kind of being distributed a bit more in that sense, and also creating new experiences. You don't need to have the film come out under this like hush of secrecy anymore, and you can do all sorts of things. You can include like 2 or 3 different sets, or like fake versions. So it's like, which is the actual real movie? Which way is it going to end? So for those people who do want spoilers, they can kind of go and find it out. And for those who don't, then, they can also remain ignorant and wait till the full feature length film comes out. There's just me imagining things for, I don't know, 20 years time, but there's definitely the sort of road I think we're going down, rather than let's create, let's double down on making sure that none of the plot line gets revealed by people who are taking, let's take away all their cameras and then let's take away their glasses, because now you've got the ability to take photos in glasses. And yeah. I really see value for value just infiltrating a lot of industries. Okay, here's a question for you. In maybe like, say, 5-10 years time, how big would you imagine value for value to be? Do you think it's like a mainstream concept? Is it still something that's related to people who are more interested in that 1,000 true fans? And so it's always going to be relatively small. How do you kind of imagine it in the distant future?
I think value for value will only be mainstream if there's a mainstream person talking about it. Along with that, the other side of that is it just becomes somehow natural. It somehow becomes like somehow young people just know value for value. And I just don't see that happening. So let's just like, for me, if I could just be selfish, if I try to be mainstream, I would like to be the person to bring value for value into the mainstream and be an example of being a value for value director, a podcaster who makes movies. I have my 1,000 fans. I have my community, and I'm able to do like a road show for my independent movie, and I can travel around the country and bring it to a theater, and I can promote that and people will come. But I can also, on the other side, I want to be able to make other deals. I want to be able to do other things. I don't have a clear vision for that yet, but I know that value for value needs the mainstream, and mainstream is going to blend in with value for value. And I'm curious.
Yeah, I think that's the thing where it'll be this kind of blend, because there's sort of what I imagine. I imagine a Spotify type entity, probably not them because they're a bit too stuck in their ways, but something similar to that, where you pay your $9 a month or whatever, and it's just a more even distribution. It's just more fair. Perhaps it's a little bit more open, where if you pay your $9 a month, it's like, hey, this is where it's actually going to. It's going to go directly to the people that you listen to. So instead of, if you listen only to the Doorfuls or to Homeless Moses on Spotify, and instead it doesn't all go to Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber, for example. And so it actually goes to the people who you listen to, and it's split up like that. So it's kind of value for value, but not really, because, it's not you choosing exactly how much to send to each artist. But that's a hard thing to do anyway. You can. I certainly don't boost into every single episode that I listen to of value for value shows. I always have my streaming on, so I always try and support in that manner. But yeah, it's impossible to boost into every single episode, especially if you're listening to multiple a day, because it's just like sometimes you have nothing to say, so it's like whatever. You could still just hit the boost button, I guess. But yeah, this is where I kind of see like I think just the ideals behind value for value perhaps just filtering out. So maybe value for value doesn't get the recognition or the name of this is what it is, but just the ideals of being permissionless, of being of having value transfer, of accessibility to anyone, any place, any time, of being able to choose your amount, and of transparency of where things are actually going and why they're going to these certain places. Those aspects of it just filter out into a more mainstream kind of venue.
Yeah, man. I see it blending with movies in a way where, like, what if you could just boost the movie while you're watching it? I know it's sort of sacrilegious to have your phone out during the movie, but if you're watching a good movie, like, wouldn't it be nice to just be able to just send the support right then and there? Like, you don't have to really pay for it. You just want to like support it however way you want. I feel like that could really happen. And there needs to be some sort of way where the splits need to expand. Everything needs to expand. Everything needs to like become stronger. But I think we're on the cusp of that. I really believe that value for value it's just that healthier system. It's a system that incentivizes humans to be humans, or to be good people at least, or to be honest people. Every other system incentivizes people to be greedy and incentivizes people to lie. The reason why Hollywood is filled with stories of backstabbing and people being mean is because like there was money involved. Like you can make more money if you leave someone in the dirt. You can make money if you just like don't tell someone. If you give someone the wrong address, you could really screw them out of like life-changing money. That could happen to you. You could meet the wrong guy and just make the wrong deal, and that happens all the time. So value for value is just healthier. So somehow the healthier system, I think, is the better system. And I'll definitely be talking about it for forever. So as long as there's people talking about it, then people will know about it.
Definitely. Speaking of, what are your kind of plans coming up for the future in terms of other films that you want to do, other creative ventures that you want to go down? What's intriguing you?
Yeah, man, I got a few different ideas. If I were to do a feature film, if I were to put all my energy in a feature film, I think that might come out in like 2027 if I really wanted to push it, if I really wanted to like go hard. I was just thinking about that today. So I could probably do it in 3 years. I've also had ideas of leaning into more animation videos. There's animation software that's getting better and better. It's getting easier to learn animation and to apply animation in your videos. So I've thought about doing something similar that I did with Magic Mushroom Fun Time, but on a more consistent basis. Try to have some sort of a weekly cartoon situation with the value for value music. I'm not sure what that would look like exactly, but that's just something I've been playing with. Like, it'd be nice to have like a Saturday morning value for value cartoon. I think that'd be cute, you know? If value for value is going to grow, you know, you got to be able to have like, what are you watching? What are you listening to? Is right now it's only Bitcoin podcasts and weird mushroom movies. We just need like the more family-esque entertainment. We need more generalized entertainment. Because then if it appeals to more people, then ideally more people will watch it and more people will know about the model.
Because Magic Mushroom Fun Time, for those, and I highly recommend checking out. There'll be a link in the show notes. What you did there with AI and your animation was, it was very short, kind of like short scenes of maybe a couple of seconds long, with visual, I guess like visualizers, I guess you'd call it. It's those that AI kind of type animation where you can be zooming in on a scene, or you can have like psychedelic effects going on, or all sorts of interesting things. But the story, I guess, was driven more by the live action stuff, where it was you dancing, which, by the way, was awesome. I love your dancing style.
Thank you.
And that was what was driving the story forward. And yeah, definitely having like the animation being what's actually like the creation of the story would be really interesting. What did you learn from all your experiments with AI and testing out of things?
I learned that you definitely can't make a whole movie with it. There's no way right now you'll be able to make a whole movie with it. If you go on Twitter and just look at the people who claim to be AI filmmakers, you know, they're just making terrible trailers and they're making really weird, just like not stories. They're just not telling stories. They're just coming up with an image and they're just trying to like put it out there, and they're just trying to have content. And a lot of the AI people, like, there's more value in the people who are using AI for animation. There's a lot more interesting stuff going on there because that deals with very specific styles. And
so that's where they'll have a base image or something, and then using AI to animate that image.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's exactly what I did. But what I'm describing is there's no real vision with it. There's no real, like, I don't know, just in my opinion, there's no real storytelling happening with it right now. But I wanted to use it as an accent for my story. I almost saw the combination of the AI and the live action as, so you're right, the story is the people. The story is the human faces, and it's me and Shannon sort of pushing the things forward. And the AI is what's going on inside of me, whether in my head or in my emotions. And I'm just moving through that energy. That's really what the main focus was. And I saw my path as an opportunity to be smarter with AI, because I wasn't trying to replace anything with AI. I was trying to express something. And that's the biggest problem with AI right now. People are seeing it and they're scared of it as a replacement, but it needs to be seen as an expression, like a tool to express, a tool to extend. And when you think about it like that, then it's not really that scary, you know? It's not really that bad. It's just a tool. And it gave me some pretty interesting images, you know, because I used the still image AI called Midjourney. I developed those, but I should back up even more. I drew on these index cards, and then I had the AI translate that. And then I had the move with video AI called Runway Gen 2. And it was in this process of me hand drawing something originally and trying to understand what I'm trying to express, having the AI just generalize that, have it break down. There's actually a function within Midjourney where the function is \describe. And then you upload a photo and it describes that photo. And it gives you 4 different prompts. And so it would describe my images in a few different ways. And it was just the process of selecting which images I was vibing with the most, which images were the most interesting, which images were like resonating with me. And once I got those photos down, then I was able to go to the video AI. And the innovation with those is you're able to just highlight a section of the picture, and that section will move. And so you're able to have some movement with that. You're able to give direction to the object, and then you're able to give direction to the camera. And it's a very rudimentary thing. It's very rudimentary, and it's very different from, it's like different but similar to like the early days of making movies. When they were first making movies, they didn't really have sound. And when they first figured out how to make sound, they would have to record it on one piece of film, and then they would they would project light through that film, and they would bounce that light off a mirror onto the film strip where the video was. And that's how they synced up audio. There was like this like bouncing around reflections and just like manipulating different materials. The same thing is happening with AI and Midjourney and Gen 2. We're using this like weird computational lighting and reflecting it into a different tool and projecting it onto a file. And it looks like it's moving, but is it really moving? I don't know, but it looks like it.
Yeah. It kind of, do you plan on keeping up with the latest updates with it to still be experimenting with it? Did you find the actual process of using it really fun compared to perhaps traditional filmmaking?
I've only enjoyed just playing around with Midjourney, to be totally honest. I won't be paying for these forever. Like I'm probably going to just end the subscriptions pretty soon. Just because it's not, I mean, it's fun, but it's not that worth it. That's really where it's at right now. I wanted to use it to express myself, and now I'm done expressing myself for the time being. So I will be following Midjourney. I think there's a lot of innovation happening with that. They're like a really small team, and they just have like the best the best outcomes with their images. So that's the one to look at for sure. But I don't think I'll be paying for them for too long, only until like it's really necessary to have it, or if it's like a legitimate tool for like my business.
Yeah. I mean, these are kind of some of the sunk costs or things behind the scenes which people don't realize. Same with podcasting. You know, you got to pay for the podcast host every now and then for a piece of gear when a microphone stuffs up, or for these additional little extras to, if you wanted to do video, for example, or if you wanted to chapter art, you know, all of these sorts of things. You can find free versions of them, but man, even then, you still have to pay somehow in some way, and whether it be through your time or through just money. And all these sorts of things are where it's like, this is where it's value for value is kind of risky in that sense, because there's no guarantees. When I was putting that call out for voice actors, which you took me up on, and I still want to kind of, you know, the problem at the moment with the book reviews is I know we get some streaming amounts in every now and then, but it's just not like a highly boostable show, and I'm trying to figure out exactly why, because the Mere Mortals does pretty well. The Value for Value show certainly does well, but the book reviews has always been very kind of staggered. It's like it's harder to do it, and I'm trying to think of ways to really emphasize the value for value, or to do things differently there, because you know, you're putting in time and effort into it, and not seeing, you know, that kind of compensation. And there was a voice actor reached out to me. He must have heard from a friend or something. And I was explaining to him value for value, and just saying like, oh yeah, you know, if you were to appear on the Value for Value show, you'd get about this much. And it wasn't that much. It would probably be about, I think it was like the equivalent of $15 for a couple hours of work, which is what I kind of guesstimated as how long it would take him to record some audio things. Mm-hmm. And he was just like, oh, you know, like, and I was saying like, oh, there's a pretty experimental system, man. There's no guarantees or anything. And he was like, yeah, no, it actually kind of makes sense, but it's just too low for me in terms of how much I actually get paid normally. So I was like, yeah, yeah, that's totally fine. So it does require that kind of like almost risk taking as well to be willing to be like, I'm not going to get any upfront guarantees of any of this, and I'll probably have to sink some costs in. Thankfully, the great thing is like it's all relatively minor. Paying for podcast hosting isn't too much per month. I think with Podhome, you were saying it's like $15 a month or something for how much I'm paying for my various ones. It's anywhere from like 20 to 30 roughly. So yeah, value for value does it requires that mindset shift as well. Very different from like the salary type model.
Well, you just described the exact situation that's out here. People they work their way into an economy that pays them a certain amount, that's based off of advertising usually, that's based off of a different company's payroll or a different company's debt. To be totally real, like most companies are paying you with their debt. So it's they're paying you up front so you can get the work, and then the company uses their work to try to make up for the debt they have. And it's like a really just unstable system. And people are only used to playing in that system and getting paid in that system. And value for value is like just the system for New Earth. It's like the system where everyone is just happy and loves you and just wants to hear you out, and people just want to be free with value for value. And I feel like when I hear stories like what you just shared, that's a person who doesn't want to just create. That's a person who's commoditized their creativity. And value for value is like just a different thing.
Yeah, it's based. I mean, the underlying aspect of it is positivity and optimism. You're creating something up front, and then relying on reciprocity, on the goodness of people's hearts, to pay for a thing that they can get for free. And it's funny how kind of radical that seems in some cases, because so many people are saying like, I don't know, have been made bitter by life by, for example, or saying like, no, you have to force it out of people. Like you have to, it kind of needs to be extractive. You need to strong arm them. This is why you need to do the paywall. This is why you need to do advertising, because people won't pay in that direct manner. You need to kind of do it through a sneaky second-hand manner where they pay for a product which you have advertised on your show, and then the product makes money and all that sort of thing. What are your just general thoughts on advertising? Would you ever do it for any of your shows?
Not for America Plus. No way. I might do an ad for a YouTube video, but I don't even know what that would even be. I know I don't like advertising. I would only want advertisers of companies that I know are aligned with, like if I do like a food, I would want that food company to be aligned with the cycles of nature, like if it's like a meat company or like a drink or something, I don't know. I want it to be healthy. I want it to be aligned with nature.
Gatorade 2, G2.
Yeah, exactly. Just all those Gatorade chemicals are natural. But something like that, like I'm not really into the idea of selling Oreos or selling alcohol or selling anything like that. I really just want to be able to build my name off of value for value and tickets. Value for value, ticket sales. Like if I want you to pay for something, buy something, like buy the ticket. Or maybe I might sell a DVD, like buy the DVD. Like I want you to actually pay for an experience, pay for something that is like you'll remember. I don't care about advertising at all, even though I know it works. Like it can work. It totally does work. Like the reason why people saw Barbie and Oppenheimer on the same day is because the internet decided to just advertise Barbie and Oppenheimer together, and it just like became like a meme. And so like marketing has its place, but it's about like how you talk about it. It goes back to like how you say it. How you talk about it brings about how people will see it and how people will react to it. So you just got to talk about it in the right way.
Yeah. This is where I once again kind of looking value for value at a more broader, large term scale, and I go, would it be applicable for physical products, for example? So if you wanted to sell a candy bar, or if you wanted to sell a deodorant or something like that, could you do it in a value for value manner? I'm kind of skeptical on that one. I think like the economics of, all of those do require a lot of upfront costs of creating materials and things in the real world is just so much more than the digital world. And that's why for the value for value show, for example, I've kind of limited the scope to mostly being about digital content, because that's where I'm certain it'll work. Whereas in the physical world, I'm less certain. I know there's examples of this working where you can, church CDs where people will kind of just pay for it. And if you have the kind of backdrop of understanding of the value for value system, people can work on it. So for example, I go to a Bitcoin meetup where this guy brings skewers in of steak and beef and lamb and stuff. And he cooks them. He brings it all for free, and he feeds, how many, like 20 to 30 people, something like that. And he just does it on a value for value system. He just asks like, hey, can you just pay for what you think it's worth? And it works out. There's people like me who'll pay probably more than my share of how much it actually costs. And then others who don't know about it, or who just don't want to, or whatever. But for him, it's kind of like worked out roughly even Stevens. So it might work in general. It might, but yeah, this is where, once again, I really see, I know it'll work in the digital realm. Actually, out of interest, how did you come across the Value for Value show? Because that was how we kind of first connected.
Yeah, I think Adam Curry, I mentioned your name, and you might have been, I don't remember the exact details, but your name just kept popping up. People just kept saying your name. And I was like, who is Kyrin? Who is Mere Mortals? Who is this? And I think it was also early enough in Value for Value and podcasting 2.0 where there really just weren't that many podcasts that you were able to stream sats to and that were actually interesting. And Mere Mortals was the only like real podcast that was actually talking about different topics and also using value for value. So I think that's how I sort of got into it. And then I was like, oh, Kyrin, Mere Mortals, Value for Value. Oh, he does Value for Value podcast about digital creators. Let's figure out what this is. And then that's where I saw the value in you. I was like, okay, he's doing different shows. He likes Value for Value. He's doing all this stuff. Like, okay, this is him and I. I always saw, I've seen you and I on a same or similar wave. Like we're somehow just catching the same wave across the globe at the same time. Like,
I think
crazy.
so, man. I think so. Yeah, I think that gets back to like getting captured by an idea or a force like that, where it just is so blindingly obvious to you, but other people don't really seem to get it, and you're like, yeah, you'll get there. You'll get it eventually.
That's really what happened. And I just started vibing. I was like, wow, so he really believes in value for value. And you sort of convinced me to go all in, or go at least like mostly into value for value, because I see your commitment. I see like your love for it. And I just can't believe it's hard to describe, or it's hard for people to take in, because it's so simple. It's just so simple. It's just a simple thing. And
yeah,
you would think the simple thing gets across, but it doesn't.
Yeah, it's complexity, and it's kind of like Bitcoin in that manner, where it's if you just had to describe it, it's like it's just digital money. But then it's like, oh shit, there's like there's a lot of things beneath the surface you need to learn about before you're kind of convinced of it, I guess. But yeah, there's where I think like it'll just take time, just better technologies, more advocation for it, more just creating better things, better products. And this is why I'd really want to kind of get like your voice acting on the Value for Value show, because that's where I know people will boost in. So I'm like, yes, Cole will actually receive like that more feedback, whereas we're in that stage with the book reviews at the moment where it's like it's sluggish. We've got to keep grinding away for a bit to try and get that interaction.
Well, let's just think of it like this, man. Like so I say the word experiment a lot. Like I always say that. I'm always doing experiments. That's been a really active practice for me. So between you and I, like, let's just approach this thing as an experiment. Like, book reviews is like sort of working, barely working. Value for value might work different. Like, what's a better way to utilize the voice acting? What's a better way to share the information? Or what's like the most entertaining way, you know? And that's a process of like figuring out that edit, figuring out that format. But I think we're on to something. We're on to being real examples of how people can utilize this model to grow themselves. Because it's like it's you and I, like it's like ping pong. Like we're just like what's the word? Paddle, racket, rally.
Like
we're just rallying.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just rallying together. And the more we rally, like the more intense it's going to be, you know, like the longer the game goes, it's like, oh my God, how long are they going to do this for? And so, and it can get like that. It can really get like that. And that's where like, and that's focus. And that can happen between you and I with value for value and just like trying to share what the opportunity is. So like, let's just do that. Like, what's the best experience, the best example of value for value? And let's just do that.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things I'm curious about with the Magic Mushroom Fun Time, for example, so I've sent in a couple of boosts already. Do you know if...
Thank you.
My pleasure. Do you know if like Homeless Moses and Shannon and Soren have the ability to kind of see those come in? Do they know that are they able to view those?
Yeah, I linked all of their fountain wallets. So the money should go to their fountain wallets. That's how that should work. So
So I guess the onus then on them is like they need to know to like, oh, hey, check out Fountain every once in a while to see if something's coming.
Yeah, I actually, right before we got on, I texted Soren. I was like, hey, dude, someone gave us some money. Like, check your fountain. And I don't know how much she got, but I'm pretty sure he got some. I'm pretty sure like everyone's gotten a split.
Yeah, when I was doing them, I sent in a larger amount than normal, and so I think everyone was getting like at least a couple of thousand sats from what I sent in and remember.
Perfect.
So, which is Perfect. Cool, and that's I think like one of those touching points where it's just people don't realize like how impactful it can be. The first time I got a boost in, for example, was from Chad Farrow, and like that dude's name is just going to stick in my brain forever because it's like he was the first booster to send in, not the first person to provide value, because other people were doing that for much like, you know, I was doing the show for almost 2 years before I really started integrating value for value in, but the first person to send it in that manner was just like, holy shit, yeah, this is kind of like game changing. This is gonna make everything different.
I was giddy when I first saw someone send in Bitcoin to me. I couldn't believe it. I was like extremely happy. I forget the name of it. It might have been Joel W. Might have been a different name. Might have been you. But I just there was mornings when I would like always check my Fountain wallet because there was a period of time when I would get like a lot. Like during the Sat Slingers, I would get like a bunch of like sats going my way, and it was pure dopamine. I'm like, oh, look at all this money, whoa! and then it's like slows down. You know, it slows down. There's like peaks and valleys. Yeah. And I don't want it to be dopamine. I don't want it to be like addictive, but like it's so incredible how like I know there's another person sending me that right now. It's like it's not some random anything. It's a person.
Yeah, it's not just a statistic on a page on SoundCloud or on your podcast host where you don't even know if it's a bot or not. I'm very skeptical of a lot of the views that I have or downloads that I have on those places. And even if they are a genuine download onto an app, that doesn't necessarily mean someone's listened to it. As you see and hear with all the podcasting news kind of coming out of like Apple reducing the amount of like, what is it, like backtracking on how much actually people are downloading and listening. And
oh yeah, dude, it's all just a scam. It's all just a giant scam of analytics.
There's a lot of bullshit going on. A lot of bullshit. So it's crazy. It does have that's why it's so funny where value for value is actually real. Like it's got that realness to it, which people might think that the realness is like only in the real world or like I need to have like the handshake with that guy, or I get the number shows up on my bank account, or I get paid in cash or something like that. Whereas the real world is becoming a lot more, this digital world is now the real world in many cases. So yeah, that completely changes a lot of things as well. Dude, there's been so much fun. Is there anything you wanted to bring up, anything you want to talk about before we close it off?
I mean, yeah, man. I mean, this has been really cool, dude. Like, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for just being willing to talk with me. I wasn't expecting to be able to do any interview during the release of my movie. So this is just really serendipity how it all came about. So thank you for being open to talking with me. Honestly, man,
Yeah,
I really just wanted to know, when are you coming out to America? What are those months? Are you traveling out here? Is that official yet? Or what's going on with that?
Nothing's particularly official. Just so like you'll know this as well. Just with what's going on with your dad and his cancer, and it's even more tragic to hear that he had you so young, because that means he's like not old at all. But
yeah, he's not.
yeah, with my mom, I suppose like the last couple of months were rough in the sense that she took a real sudden decline in terms of her abilities to control, like what little control she had has largely evaporated, and so there's just kind of like psychotic episodes now, which is it's heartbreaking, man. Really, it's a cruel disease. But I've kind of gotten over the emotional aspect of the change, but now it's just trying to figure out like almost how long she's got left, what kind of state she's going to be in. Do I want to be here for as much time as possible? Do I have time to travel for like 3 or 4 months? Basically, I definitely want to be in the US for the end of July 2024, because that's when that Bitcoin event is on. Whether, if you heard in the last Podcasting 2.0, whether there's a actual on-stage thing, whether I'm part of that, I'm kind of like ambivalent about. All I know is like a lot of people are planning on being there, so I really want to be there and meet all of these podcasters, a large portion of them US based, but even people like Oscar Mary from Fountain, who's probably going to be there, to meet them all in person, to not just have these online connections. So I will be there for that, and there is a semi likelihood that I'll be coming to LA afterwards, because Juan and because Juan and another friend of myself were potentially thinking of doing like a little getaway, kind of like reuniting of the band, much like we did when I was traveling through Latin America and in Mexico, and then in Japan on the way home. So yeah, that one I'm less confident of, but yeah, we'll see. And if so, like 100%, I'd come visit you, man.
Yeah, man, I got you, dude. I want to try to come out to Nashville. I want to try to do that. I don't care about the Bitcoin conference, but
yeah,
I hang out with the people.
I really don't care that much.
I care about the people, dude. So you might see me in Nashville, but if you're in LA, man, I'll drive you anywhere. You can crash at the couch. We got a blow up mattress, so we got you covered with that. I'll show you around. Have you ever been to LA?
No. I've only been at the Atlanta and Seattle airports, Atlanta and somewhere else.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I haven't actually even stepped foot in the US properly.
Yeah, man. We'll have to go on a hike. Like, I would so take you on like a LA hike. You would think it's hilarious.
Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, this is so what I want to do is to travel to Brazil, and like I'm kind of over my days of traveling on my own to explore the world, to create memories like that. I want to go places where I know people and can get like a authentic experience, not just the gringo backpacker experience. So and that's why I want to go to Brazil. I've got a real good friend there, so I would much rather go there and get to experience the cookout or like a Brazilian barbecue in his backyard with his friends, where they're cooking over like just a random grill, rather than going to a restaurant, or going to Nashville and seeing Ainsley Costello or the Dorfills playing music, and rather than just whatever band is in, this famous steakhouse or eatery or, bar or whatever. So yeah, 100%. I'd much rather go and walk around the poo in the LA streets with you rather than just by myself. I'm joking.
I know, dude. I'll introduce you to all the homeless people around my apartment.
Yeah, for sure. Have that genuine connection. Awesome, man, dude. Thanks so much for appearing on. If you were to direct people to anywhere, where's the best place? Maybe your Twitter. Cole McCormick.
Yeah, man. Yeah, my Twitter's the best thing. My Twitter's my main social media, just Cole McCormick 1. And then follow me on Fountain if you want. Follow me on Instagram. I got Instagram. Same name, Cole McCormick 1. And yeah, just look out for more of my movies. Follow my podcast, America Plus. I post every Sunday in the afternoons. And yeah, I'm doing it forever. So stay tuned.
Legend. Awesome. Thanks so much, man. And hopefully see you soon.
Thank you, man. Yes.